So the PMO problem solved. You're probably thinking, it's supposed to be a birthday celebration. It is, and we're just kind of kicking off really some of the things that we want to do into the new year for us. And what we asked is if you people, members have got a particular problem and they're happy to share it. What I really liked about this was you've got a problem, a challenge, or a confession. We'll take any of them, but the important thing is that they're anonymous. We've actually got the first one as we were setting up this session today.
And just to be absolutely clear, going back to being kind of very straightforward, this isn't one we made up.
No, absolutely. We don't make anything up. We're ethically every day.
Every day, yes. So we put this out, and we didn't know whether somebody had actually kind of come back with this problem. Lo and behold, before we kind of turned our back,
actually got a couple, but this is the one that came in.
This is the one that kind of came up. So interesting in terms of kind of distilling this kind of problem down. Or we're not going to kind of read you, it's there on the screen for you to read, but actually kind of distilling it down. There's probably a number of things that we can see that are from that problem. So there's obviously a kind of interesting conversation about kind of being very kind of admin heavy. Interesting in terms of high staff turnover. Which is an interesting one to think about, but kind of really try to understand what the main issue is about, whether we can kind of reduce the load or actually make it quicker. And we had a conversation, and typically what would happen when we launched this as a kind of a service for the members that is dealing with the problems, we'll get other people to contribute. Today it's just kind of me and Lindsay working through that. And
unless you're on the session and you're in chat and you've got a burning desire to throw your
yes, absolutely. We have got in true style, we do have the chat box open, and typically we do have, this is where not just kind of individuals can kind of help you, but also we've got a library of information. So this kind of particular problem, there was a number of things that kind of Lindsay and I were talking about in terms of the conversation we would have. It's always interesting where we find an admin heavy PMO in terms of kind of what the history is around that, about kind of where the need or the desire is to kind of for the PMO to do all of that admin, and whether we really understand the value that brings to the organisation, and whether there are other things that would have more value. And I think from that, kind of distilling that again, it's really hard when you've got your head down in the roots to kind of, or in the weeds, not in the roots, head down in the weeds, to actually kind of be able to lift yourself up and kind of have a thing. And we would do encourage that kind of PMO leads, PMO managers do always provide themselves with a sufficient time to constantly reflect on what is it the PMO is doing and who are we doing it for, and then really start thinking around how do we demonstrate value. And if there is perceived value to the admin, then then actually that might be the right thing to do for our organisation.
Well, we had a session at the conference that opened up the conference in November, which was pretty unique. We're never probably going to see the likes of it again, but it was a team behind the vaccination programme for the UK, and they were very administration heavy. But you know what? That's what we needed. That's what senior execs needed. It's what everybody around them needed. We've done a lot of sessions, and the one that springs to mind is the few that you've done around PMO services, talk specifically about this. Are we sure about the organisation? Actually, what is it that they really want? We could have been doing this administration stuff for months and years, and we're not actually looked and seen whether this is still a requirement. Really, it's a classic, isn't it, that people produce all these reports, and none of them get looked at. So it's like, why are we doing what we're doing? But I loved your when you were saying about dropping balls.
Yes, and one of the things that I always say, if you're in a position where you really haven't got any headspace, then we do have to recognise that the likelihood is you're going to have to drop a ball, and the real skill is to drop the rubber balls and not the glass balls. So we talked about that, but we also talked about, kind of there's been a great move in the last kind of, I would say the last kind of 6 to 12 to 18 months around recognition that potentially is always going to stay part of the PMO role, but there are ways to make it quicker.
Yes.
So in terms of automating, and it's lovely to have some input there off chat about actually they've resolved some of their issues with voice recognition software in terms of kind of minute taking and what have you. And we've done that in our PMO managers lunch. We've done that. We've done the same thing. And certainly in terms of robotic process automation, we've got a tool specialist as a lodger, but we've also got a number of kind of talks we've done in terms of how to take those first steps in automating some of that whole kind of cut and paste and kind of creating reports on a regular basis. So
I would say also about certainly something like the high staff turnover aspect to this one. I don't know if you remember, Eileen, that when we were doing in-person events, which we're going to be coming back and doing again, we had this session called House of Genius, which was perfect for this kind of thing, where we had a PMO volunteer who gave the problem to an audience of people. And essentially the idea was that you got a piece of advice back from every single person. And I seem to remember that one was also about high staff turnover. So even though, you know, for some people, it's like, actually, I don't think I can add much more to what's been given. Everybody in that room also benefits, because I think even though this question might not be very specific to your individual person circumstances, there'll be an element of it. And that's what we like to do with the problem ones, is get more people sharing their answers to that. That's how we all learn. So we're going to be seeing more of those, and hopefully we'll be taking it on the road again, and doing again like the House of Genius type ideas, but we'll get people sharing in a more open forum.